Hey, welcome back. If you've ever told yourself, I'll start investing once I have more money, I want you to really listen to this video, because that one sentence is probably costing you more than almost any other financial habit you have. Here's the thing, investing isn't about how much money you have right now. It's about how much time your money has to grow. And time is the one thing you can never buy back. Every year you wait is a year of growth you don't get back, not because you made a bad decision, but because you made no decision at all. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what investing actually is, the difference between saving and investing, the handful of account types and investment options you need to know about, how much money you actually need to start, the exact step-by-step process to open your first investment account this week, and the common mistakes that trip up almost every beginner, so you can skip them entirely. This is a longer video, but I promise every minute of it is going to save you from a mistake or a wasted year. Let's get into it. Let's start with the basics, because a lot of people use saving and investing like they're the same thing. They're not, and confusing the two is one of the most common reasons people either invest too aggressively with money they can't afford to lose, or never invest at all because they treat every dollar like it needs to be safe. Saving means putting money somewhere secure, usually a bank account, where it doesn't lose value day to day, but it also doesn't grow much beyond a small amount of interest. Saving is for money you might need soon, your emergency fund, a vacation next year, a security deposit, a new laptop when the old one dies. Investing means putting your money into something, usually stocks, bonds, or funds, with the expectation that it will grow in value over a longer period of time. The trade-off is that investments can go up and down in value in the short term, sometimes significantly. You're accepting some short-term uncertainty in exchange for long-term growth. Here's the core idea you need to actually understand, not just memorize. When you invest, you're not just putting money in a jar and hoping it grows. You're buying a small piece of something, a company, a bond, a fund made up of many companies, and its value changes based on how that thing performs, how investors feel about its future, and broader economic conditions. The reason people invest instead of just saving everything is something called compound growth. When your investments earn a return, and then that return also earns a return the following year, your money grows faster and faster over time, not in a straight line, but in a curve that gets steeper the longer you stay invested. Think of it like a snowball rolling downhill. It picks up more snow per rotation the bigger it gets. Money works the same way. A small amount invested consistently for 30 years can end up bigger than a much larger amount invested for only 10, purely because of how many years compounding had to work. This is genuinely the single biggest reason age 25 beats age 35 as a starting point, not because you'll pick better investments at 25, but because you'll have 10 more years of compounding working quietly in the background while you live your life. You don't need to understand every financial instrument that exists, and honestly, trying to learn everything before you start is one of the sneakiest ways people delay investing for years. You really just need to understand 4 or 5 things well. Stocks. When you buy a stock, you're buying a small ownership stake in a single company. If the company does well, grows revenue, becomes more profitable, gains investor confidence, your stock is usually worth more. If it does poorly, it's worth less. Individual stocks can be exciting, and stories about people who bought one company early and made a fortune are everywhere. But individual stocks are also risky, because you're tying your money to the fate of one company's decisions, competitors, and management. Bonds. A bond is essentially a loan you give to a company or government. In exchange, they pay you interest over a set period and return your original amount at the end. Bonds are generally more stable than stocks. You know roughly what you're going to get, but they also tend to grow more slowly over time. They're often used to balance out the ups and downs of stocks in a portfolio. Index funds and ETFs. This is the one I want you to pay the most attention to, because for most beginners, this is where you should start. An index fund or ETF, exchange-traded fund, is a basket that holds hundreds or even thousands of different stocks or bonds at once. Instead of betting on one company, you're spreading your money across an entire market, say, the 500 largest companies in your country, or the entire global stock market in one purchase. The advantage is diversification. If one company in the fund does badly, it barely affects your overall investment, because you also own hundreds of other companies at the same time. If a competitor does better instead, you own a piece of that success too. This is genuinely the most common recommendation from financial educators for someone just starting out, because it removes the pressure of trying to pick individual winning stocks, something even professional fund managers struggle to do consistently. Mutual funds. Similar idea to an ETF, a pooled basket of investments managed together, but typically bought and sold through a fund company rather than traded like a stock throughout the day. For beginners, the practical difference between a low-cost index mutual fund and an index ETF that tracks the same market is usually small. What matters more is the fee the fund charges, which we'll get to in a moment. Retirement accounts. This isn't a type of investment exactly. It's a special type of account that often comes with tax advantages, meant specifically for long-term investing toward retirement. Depending on your country, this might be called something like a 401k, an IRA, an RSP, an NPS, or an employer pension scheme. These accounts often let your investments grow without being taxed every single year the way a regular account might be, which is a meaningful long-term advantage. It's the difference between your money compounding freely versus getting slowed down slightly every year by taxes. A quick note on fees. Whatever you invest in, pay attention to something called the expense ratio, the annual fee a fund charges as a percentage of your investment. A fund charging 0.05% a year versus one charging 1% a year sounds like a tiny difference, but over 20 or 30 years, that gap can quietly cost you a significant chunk of your final returns. Low-cost index funds are popular specifically because their fees tend to be extremely low. This is the myth I most want to bust today. A lot of people think investing requires a big lump sum, $5,000, $10,000, whatever number feels intimidating and just out of reach. That used to be more true years ago, when brokerages required high minimum deposits and charged real commissions on every trade. It is not true anymore. Most brokerages today let you start with a tiny amount, sometimes even less than the cost of your last takeout order. Many platforms also let you buy fractional shares, meaning you can invest a fixed dollar amount into an index fund or ETF, even if one full share of that fund costs far more than what you have to invest that month. The number that actually matters is not your starting amount. It's your consistency. Investing a modest, fixed amount every single month, for 20 years, will almost always outperform someone who waits 3 years to save up a bigger lump sum and invests at once. This isn't just a motivational idea, it comes down to time in the market and the compounding effect we talked about earlier. So the real first question isn't, how much do I need? It's, what small, consistent amount can I commit to right now, without creating financial stress? That might be a very modest number today. That's completely fine. The habit matters far more than the size at the start, because you can always increase the amount later as your income grows, but you can't get back the years you didn't start. Okay, let's get practical. Here's exactly what to do in order. Step 1. Make sure your foundation is solid first. Before you invest a single dollar, you want 2 things in place. No high-interest debt, think credit cards, payday loans, anything charging above roughly 8 to 10% interest, and a small emergency cushion, even just 1 month of essential expenses. Investing is a long-term game. You don't want to be forced to sell your investments at a bad time, potentially at a loss, because of an unexpected car repair or medical bill. Step 2. Decide what account you're investing through. If your job offers a retirement account with any kind of employer match, meaning your employer adds money on top of what you contribute, start there first, before anything else. That match is essentially free money added to your investment, and there's no investment strategy in the world that reliably beats a guaranteed match. If there's no employer account available, or you've already captured the full match, open an individual brokerage account or the equivalent tax-advantaged retirement account available in your country. Step 3. Choose a broker or platform. Look for one with low or no account fees, no minimum deposit requirement, and access to low-cost index funds or ETFs. Most well-known, regulated brokerages today meet this bar. The differences between them matter far less than the fact that you actually open the account and start. Don't spend 3 weeks comparing platforms down to the smallest feature. Pick a reputable, regulated one and move forward. Step 4. Pick your first investment. For a true beginner, a single, broad, low-cost index fund, something that tracks a wide swath of the stock market rather than a narrow sector or single country, is usually the simplest, most defensible starting point. You're not trying to be clever here, and you don't need to be. You're trying to own a small piece of the overall market and let time do the work, rather than trying to guess which single company or sector will outperform. Step 5. Automate it. Set up an automatic, recurring transfer, weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, from your bank account into your investment account. This does 2 important things. It removes the temptation to time the market or second-guess yourself every time you'd otherwise have to manually decide to invest, and it builds the habit so investing becomes as automatic and unremarkable as paying a phone bill. Step 6. Leave it alone. This is the hardest step, emotionally, and the most important one mechanically. Markets go up and down. There will be months, maybe even years, where your investment is worth less than what you put in. The instinct to check constantly and react to short-term drops is completely normal, and it's also the single most common way beginners hurt their own returns. The data across decades consistently shows that people who stay invested through downturns tend to do better over time than people who sell in a panic and try to jump back in later, because nobody reliably knows when the bottom actually is until well after the fact. A few traps I want you to watch for, because I see beginners fall into these constantly. Chasing hot tips. If a friend, an influencer, or an online forum is excited about a specific stock or coin, be skeptical rather than swept up. By the time something is exciting enough to talk about widely, a lot of the easy gains have usually already happened, and you're often buying in near the top of the hype rather than the beginning of it. Checking your portfolio every day. This trains your brain to react emotionally to short-term noise that has almost no bearing on a goal that's 10, 20, or 30 years away. Checking daily makes you feel more informed, but it usually just makes you more anxious and more likely to make an emotional decision. Waiting for the right time. Nobody can reliably predict short-term market movements, not professional fund managers, not financial news anchors, not you. The historical data consistently favors starting now and staying consistent over trying to time your entry perfectly, because the cost of waiting on the sidelines tends to outweigh the risk of investing at a slightly imperfect moment. Investing money you'll need soon. If you'll need the money within the next 1 to 3 years, for a house down payment, a wedding, a planned move, it generally shouldn't be sitting in the stock market, where a short-term downturn could force you to sell at a loss right when you need the cash. Match your investment choice to your actual timeline for using that money. Confusing entertainment with strategy. Trading apps and financial content online can sometimes make investing feel like a game or a competition. The version of investing that actually builds wealth over decades is, frankly, a little boring, automatic, consistent, diversified, and left alone. That's not a flaw, it's the whole point. Let's bring it all together. Here's everything in one list. Understand the real difference between saving and investing, and what each is actually for. Learn the handful of building blocks: stocks, bonds, index funds, mutual funds, and tax-advantaged retirement accounts, well enough to make basic decisions. Start with a broad, low-cost index fund or ETF rather than trying to pick individual stocks, and pay attention to fees. You don't need a large amount to start. Consistency matters far more than your starting number. Get any employer retirement match first, then open a brokerage or tax-advantaged account of your own. Automate your contributions so the habit runs without relying on willpower. And leave it alone and stay consistent, especially, and specifically, when the market drops. If this helped make investing feel less intimidating, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I'm building out a full series walking through budgeting, paying off debt, and building your first complete portfolio step by step, so you don't have to figure any of this out alone or piece it together from a dozen different sources. And drop a comment below. What's the one thing about investing that's still confusing you? I read every comment, and it might become the topic of my next video. I'll see you in the next one.